The galaxy had a name for humanity long before the bombs fell. Termites, they gnawed at asteroid belts, tunneled into methane moons, left their steel and spit colonies clinging to planets like scabs. The Krys Empire observed this from their prismatic citadels, gemstone hearts pulsing with disdain. To them, humanity's chaos was a vulgar math, an equation of sweat and rusted ambition, unsolvable and loud. But on X-87, the termites had burrowed too deep. The colony's architects never named the mountain beneath their drills. They called it dormant, a word that meant harmless in corporate ledgers. Its magma chamber slept like a scorned god, dreaming in isotopes and pressure, while above, miners stripped copper veins and joked about early retirement. The Krys noted the site's coordinates with a shiver of crystalline disgust. Not for the theft, their own vaults overflowed with stolen starlight, but for the arrogance. To build a hive atop a geological sin, to mistake silence for surrender, humans, they decided, were not pests. They were sparks. And the Krys, for all their glittering intellect, failed to consider what sparks do best. The mountain kept its secrets, patient as a sniper. It remembered older empires, sharper claws. It waited, heat coiling in its roots, while above, a geologist named Zhang charted its grudges on a cracked tablet. Her warnings filed under hysterical. Somewhere in the dark, the universe leaned closer. Termites, after all, only bite when you kick the hive. Chapter 1. The air on X-87 tasted like rust and regret. Dr. Zhang inhaled deeply anyway, savoring the burn, a habit she'd picked up after 3 years of monitoring the seismic tantrums of this god-forsaken rock. Her fingers traced the cragged wall of the observation tunnel, the stone warm and alive beneath her gloves. Sleeping my ass, she thought. The volcano hadn't slept. It had been biding its time, same as her. Outside, the colony of Hephaestus 9 sprawled like a drunkard's dream. Mining rigs gnawed at the ashen plains, their drills whining in discordant harmony. The corporate overlords had slapped the settlement together faster than a roadside burger joint, all prefab domes and duct-taped oxygen seals. Ivy's warnings about tectonic instability had been archived under hysterical academia. She'd retaliated by requisitioning a prototype lava drone named Betsy and taken up volcano surfing, part research, part middle finger to the suits. The comms bead in her ear crackled. "Zhang, you down in the belly again?" Jax's voice, sandpaper smooth. Her ex-lover, ex-partner, ex-everything except headache. "Someone's gotta babysit your shoddy engineering," she muttered, adjusting Betsy's thermal camera. The drone skimmed a magma rivulet 2 clicks below, its feed painting her retinal display in hellish oranges. A fault line quivered on the edge of criticality. She'd seen this dance before, pressure building, plates flirting with disaster. Hephaestus wasn't erupting, it was sulking. "You're the only person who'd call a supervolcano dramatic." A pause. Mess halls serving algae loaf. Last call. Ivy ignored him. The readouts held her now, numbers scrolling like accusatory poetry. 47.3 megatons of stress along the eastern caldera, enough to crack a continent. She flicked a pebble into the abyss. "Hold it together, big guy, not today." Night fell in sulfuric veils. Ivy trudged back to her quarters, boots kicking up pumice ghosts. The colony's floodlights painted the sky jaundice yellow, drowning the stars. Somewhere above, the Krys Empire's crystalline warships hung like chandeliers in the black. Rumor was they'd been eyeing X-87 for weeks, appalled by humanity's oral vandalism, their term for industrial noise. Ivy almost respected their pretentiousness. Her room smelled of sulfur and stale rebellion. Faded protest posters clung to the walls. "Dormant doesn't mean dead." "Lava writes now," A half-assed shrine to the career she'd wanted versus the one she'd gotten. She tossed her gloves at the dented fridge, its hum the closest thing to lullaby here. The nightmare came as it always did. Chile, 2047. The Villarrica eruption. Her team's sensors had missed the surge. 4 grad students, incinerated mid-debate about post-research beers. Their laughter still echoed in the pyroclastic flow of her memory. She woke sweating, fingers clawing at the mattress. Betsy's control pad glowed on the desk, offering redemption in blinks and beeps. Still here, she told the dark. Still failing upward. Nost dawn brought a different kind of heat. Ivy was elbow-deep in Betsy's wiring when the alarms tore through the colony. Not the shrill quake warnings she knew intimately, but a warble she'd only heard in drills. Orbital strike imminent. Oh, you've gotta be kidding. She bolted outside, goggles slapped on. Miners scrambled like ants under a magnifying glass. The sky was shattering. Krys vessels descended, geometric and cruel, their facets refracting light into prismatic blades. They resembled cut diamonds if diamonds could hate. A voice boomed through the atmosphere, brittle and musical, like a choir of dropped wine glasses. You defile the silence. You are erased. Ivy's laugh surprised even her. They're HOA board members with nukes. The first bomb hit the eastern rigs. Sound evaporated. Light did something obscene. Then came the shockwave, a giant's fist crushing the air from her lungs. She flew backward, world tilting, Betsy's control pad shattering under her ribs. When she blinked awake, the colony was a charcoal sketch. Smoke pillars clawed at the ships. Someone was screaming. The volcano, though. The volcano was singing. Ivy pressed her palm to the ground. The tremor wasn't fear. It was arousal. The nuke had kissed the magma chamber, stirred it awake. She coughed blood and wonder. Oh, you beautiful idiots. Nost Jax found her in the rubble of the sensor array, salvaging lithium batteries. His left arm hung wrong, bone teeth grinning through charred skin. Still a scavenger, he rasped. Still a fixer. She tossed him a plasma cutter. The Kano's gonna blow. We've got hours. He squinted at the roiling horizon. So we die crispy instead of crispy. We redirect. She gestured at the mining charges stacked nearby, orphaned explosives from a corporate vanity project. Turn their siege into a volcanic sneeze. A grin split his soot-stained face. Petty revenge, PhD paying off. It's geological revenge. She hesitated. The coolant tunnels are my mess. I'll handle it. He limped toward the access shaft. No farewell, just a raised cutter. A lifetime of arguments dissolved in that gesture. Ivy climbed the observation spire as the world unraveled. Krys ships peppered the land with frost beams, desperate to freeze what they'd ignited. Melting crystal soldiers oozed between flaming habitation pods, their shrieks harmonic. Humanity's survivors coalesced in the shadows, Rhea the medic dragging a child from wreckage, miners forming bucket brigades with their bare hands. No heroes, just rats refusing the maze. Betsy's surviving drone feed flickered in Ivy's lens. The magma chamber pulsed, a lover scorned. She synced the charges, fingers trembling. This isn't science. This is a tantrum. But the mountain agreed. Chapter 2. Ash fell like the funeral rites of a civilization no one had bothered to name. Ivy tasted it with every breath, grit and iron, the planet chewing itself to splinters. She crouched in the corpse of a mining rig, its skeleton twisted by the Krys' cold beams into a grotesque metal coral. Betsy Dutta, her jury-rigged replacement drone, hummed a war song at her hip. The volcano's heartbeat thrummed through her boots, a rhythm that matched the pulsing burn scar on her thigh, where the first nuke's shrapnel had kissed her. "Not today," she told the pain. "We're busy." The survivors had become creatures of shadow and teeth. Rhea moved among them now, stitching flesh with a soldering iron and curses, her medic's coat more blood than cloth. A child, lean, Ivy recalled, the comma operator from Logistics' daughter, slept fitfully in a cracked oxygen crate, her arms wrapped around a molten chunk of Krys soldier. The alien's once pristine crystal form had melted into something resembling a weeping candle. Ivy envied its silence. Jax was down in the coolant tunnels. Had been down there 12 hours, 17 minutes. The mainframe's death rattle had flatlined 2 hours ago. She didn't let herself think about the way he'd looked at her before descending. Not a lover's gaze, not even a friend's. A collaborator's. A co-conspirator in the grand fuck you they were drafting against the universe. Betsy Dudas. Feed flickered. The magma chamber swelled, a lover's sigh against the crust. Ivy traced the fault lines on her thigh tablet, her fingers trembling not from fear but wanting. The Krys ships orbited like vultures made of chandeliers, frost projectors glaring baleful blue. They were trying to freeze the eruption, to bury their mistake under glaciers. As if ice could ever shame fire.
Dang!
Rhea materialized beside her, a specter with a plasma pistol. "We're out of morphine, and hope, which'll kill us first." Ivy handed her a dented flask, home-brewed rotgut that smelled like industrial cleaner. Yes. They drank. The liquid carved a trench down Ivy's throat. Somewhere above, a Krys scout ship shattered against the thermals, its crystalline crew raining down as molten glass. Leon stirred, murmuring numbers, logistics codes. Even in sleep, she was tallying the dead. The tunnels were alive, not with the Krys' geometric hatred, but with the volcano's song, a basso profundo shiver that made Ivy's fillings ache. She crawled through a service duct, Betsy Dudas, scouting ahead, its spotlights painting the walls in feverish yellows. The air reeked of sulfur and Jax's last cigar, the one he'd lit for atmosphere before sealing himself into the coolant chamber. Show off. She found him where the tunnel kinked, a fault line in human architecture. His body was half fused to a steam pipe, the coolant valve's lever still gripped in his skeletal hand. Frost limned his lashes, beautiful and obscene. The Krys ice tech had breached the chamber, but he'd brute-forced the system into override. A lost cause perfected. His tablet lay intact. She pried it free. A single message glowed. A schematic of the mining charges, their placements adjusted for maximum theatricality. None needed. Ivy pressed her forehead to the icy pipe. The cold bit, a counterpoint to the furnace in her chest. "You always loved last words." Her breath plumed, stealing the lie. The survivors gathered at the caldera's edge. 23 souls, their faces smudged with ash and stolen courage. Ivy's boots crunched over obsidian shards as she unspooled detonator wire. The charges nestled like eggs in the volcano's throat. The Krys had begun glassing the periphery, their beams carving craters into valleys she'd once mapped for copper. Copper. She laughed, the sound raw. All this for a metal humans used to make pennies and bad plumbing. Rhea crouched beside her, calibrating a stolen Krys thermal scanner. "He's cooling off." A nod. No tears. Tears were too precious here. Water rationed for engines and blood. "The kid's running the numbers. Says we've got a 12% chance. Generous. She likes you." Ivy glanced at Leon, who was whispering to Betsy Dudas, like it was a pet.
The drone beeped dutifully. Mistakes were made. The ground shuddered. A fissure split the slope below, vomiting a river of lava that swallowed a Krys ground unit whole. Their screams were wind chimes in a hurricane. Ivy's retinal display flashed. Pressure critical. The volcano was done with foreplay. Time? Rhea asked. Ivy inhaled fire. Now. The detonator was a joke. A coffee tin stuffed with wires and spite. She cradled it as she climbed the spire's remains. Betsy Dudda's camera feeding her the magma's ascent. Good girl. The charges were Jax's last gift. A lover's hand on the small of the volcano's back. Push here. Admiral Virikal's voice crackled through a scavenged Krys comms orb. Cease this spectacle. You are not artists. Ivy thumbed the detonator. We're vandals. She pressed the switch. The mountain came. Chapter 3. The detonator's click echoed like a bone breaking in the throat of God. For a heartbeat nothing. Ivy's lungs held the silence, her ribs a cathedral of doubt. Then the mountain moved. Not an eruption. A shrug. The tectonic yawn of a giant bored with pretense. The ground split beneath her boots. A jagged grin stretching toward the Krys ships. She stumbled, ash clotting her throat. Betsy Dudda's camera feed dissolving into static as the drone melted into the updraft. Goodbye, girl. Lava surged, not as a river but a serpent, a molten spire twisting skyward, its scales glinting with the faces of the dead. Jax's smirk, Leon's trembling code whispers, the nameless miners who'd cursed her for closing their shafts. Ivy's retinal display fizzed with pressure warnings, but she kept her eyes wide. She owed them this, to watch the world burn without flinching. The Krys flagship hovered like a chandelier above a funeral, its frost beams lancing down to freeze the lava's crest. Useless. The magma cooled just enough to solidify mid-air, its shape warping under the strain of gravity and spite. Ivy squinted. Oh, you perfect bastards. The beam had sculpted the eruption into something artistic. A middle finger. 10 miles tall, obsidian knuckle cocked skyward, nail flecked with frozen diamond from the Krys' own tech. Happy accident, Ivy croaked, though there were no ears left to hear her. Rhea was gone, buried under a rockslide with Leon's codebook clasped to her chest. The survivors were embers now, scattered in the wind. She'd outlived them all, just as she'd outlived Chile, the volcano's final joke. Admiral Virikal's voice screeched through the collapsing atmosphere, crystalline syllables shattering against the roar. This abomination violates the sacred forms. Ivy spat blood, warm and metallic. You're right. She dragged herself onto a buckling ledge, the statue's shadow drenching her. Should have been bigger. Myvis the Krys ships fractured. Not from lava, but from shame. Their perfect angles faltered as the middle finger's silhouette splashed across every galactic comms channel, a meme birthing itself in real time. Ivy watched through a cracked tablet scavenged from a dead soldier's grip, her own face reflected in the screen, blistered, bloodied, grinning. Human reinforcements arrived, not as saviors but paparazzi. Battle cruisers framed against the statue, cadets taking selfies with the galactic flip-off. A journalist in a hazard suit thrust a mic at Ivy. Dr. Zhang. Is it true you planned this symbol? She stared at the middle finger, its shadow staining the rubble where Jax had once sketched schematics in the dust. Planned. The word tasted absurd, like a child claiming to plan a hurricane. It's geology. We're all just punctuation. The journalist blinked. Ivy limped away, her boots crunching over frozen lava shards that sang like wind chimes. Might fell, but the statue glowed. Residual heat. Krys' humiliation. Ivy didn't care. She crouched in the corpse of her old lab, salvaging Betsy's carcass. The drone's last feed flickered. A close-up of the magma chamber's final sigh. A red-gold wink. Footsteps. Not human. Veracol oozed through the doorway, his crystalline form half-melted, facets weeping silvery ichor. The Admiral resembled a chandelier dragged through a war. "You stole our beauty," he hissed, voice fraying at the edges. "That sculpture, it is ours. The ice beams angle, the sacred forms demand." Ivy snorted. "Copyright infringement. Really?" He lunged, brittle claws raking her arm. She didn't flinch. Pain was an old friend, and she'd brought a newer one. Jax's plasma cutter, scavenged from the coolant tunnels. It flared blue, kissing the Admiral's remaining prism. "Here's your sacred form." She carved a crude middle finger into his chest. Veracol shattered, not with a bang but a whimper, his shards spelling cowardice in Krys glyphs. Ivy stepped over the pieces. Wrong again. Ivy stepped. Dawn found her at the statue's base. Tourists had already arrived. Grifters hawking authentic volcanic ash. Weepy poets declaiming odes to defiance. A Terran senator posing for holos. Ivy hunched in Betsy's cockpit, the drone's carcass repurposed as a shelter. Her fingers traced the fault lines on her thigh, mapping fresh tremors. A child approached, clutching a shard of Krys glass. "Are you the lady who broke the sky?" Ivy studied her, Leon's eyes Rhea's stubborn chin. "A ghost wearing new skin." "Nah, the sky was always broken." The girl placed the shard at her feet. "Mom says you're a hero." "Mom's wrong. But you won." Ivy glanced at the statue, its shadow stitching the ruins together. "Winning's just losing with better lighting." The girl skipped away, already forgetting. Ivy envied her. Chapter 4. The statue outlived its architects. Ivy watched it through the cracked viewport of a departing shuttle, its obsidian finger chipped by solar winds but still upright, still rude. Tourists swarmed its base now, their neon jackets blooming like algae on a whale's corpse. A Terran magnate had installed a gift shop inside the middle knuckle. Ivy's lawyers, her lawyers, what a joke, sent her royalty statements stamped public domain in angry red ink. She burned them for warmth. The galaxy had moved on. X-87 was a novelty, a postcard from the edge of human audacity. Ivy's scars were not. Her body ached in languages she didn't speak, phantom pains from limbs she hadn't lost. The shuttle's antiseptic air stank of false starts. She'd been summoned to the core worlds not as a war hero, but a defendant. The Krys had filed their lawsuit in triplicate, their grief polished into legal barbs. Copyright infringement, cultural defamation, unauthorized use of sacred geometry. "You should have charged admission," muttered her court-appointed android counsel, its voice box still smudged with someone else's fingerprints. "Monetize the meme." Ivy ignored it. The stars outside were too clean, too quiet. She missed the volcano's grumble, the way X-87's atmosphere had scratched at her lungs like a feral cat. She missed the dead too, but that was a heavier suitcase, best left unpacked. He had. The courtroom was a cathedral of lies. Marble floors swallowed footsteps. Holograms of long-dead judges leered from alcoves. The Krys delegation sat across the aisle, their crystalline forms draped in mourning veils that hissed like static. Admiral Veracol's replacement, a sharp-faced bureaucrat named Krys, clicked her facets in disdain. The sculpture's angle precisely mirrors the sacred fissures of Kyleth Prime. This is theft. This is art. Ivy's android sighed. They've got a point. The middle finger is mathematically elegant. She stood, her boots echoing. The judge's holograms flickered. Bored. You bombed us into inspiration. Her voice surprised her, calm as a closed casket. The lava. Your frost beams. It was a collaboration. You don't get to sue the canvas. Krylthra vibrated, shedding diamond dust. We are not your muse. No. Ivy smiled. You're the punchline. The gavel fell. The statue stayed public. Krylthra dissolved into a puddle of legal briefs and high-pitched wailing. Ivy stepped outside, squinting at a sun that didn't taste like blood. They offered her a planet, not a medal, not a pension, a ragged terraforming gig on the fringe, where the soil wept acid and the sky hung like a necrotic lung. She took it. The contract was signed with stolen Krys ink. The words hazard pay, smudged into oblivion. Her crew was a mosaic of cast-offs. A botanist who talked to fungi, a pilot with a grudge against gravity, and Leon, now 16, her hair dyed volcanic red, Jax's plasma cutter strapped to her thigh. She'd shown up uninvited, a living ghost with Rhea's smirk. I hear you're building a better apocalypse. Ivy tossed her a shovel. I'm building a compost heap. They worked. The land fought them, vomiting sulfur geysers and spine-backed reptiles. Ivy mapped fault lines, not to exploit but to soothe. Leon sang to the drills, her voice tuning the machinery into lullabies. At night, they huddled around lava pits, their faces painted in borrowed light. Why here? Leon asked once, her breath frosting in the toxic air. Ivy poked the fire, stirring embers into Rhea's face. Jax's shrug. Guilt needs a garden. 5 years blurred. The colony, New Hephaestus, a name chosen by committee and regret, sprouted domes like soap bubbles. Ivy's hair grayed, her hands now more scar than skin. She received hollows of the statue, Krys pilgrims laying grievance stones at its base, Terran couples marrying under its shadow, the gift shop burned down by anarchists. She deleted them. The past made poor fertilizer. One evening, as she calibrated a seismic dampener, a ship breached the atmosphere, not a tourist vessel, sleek, crystalline, its angles humming with familiar pettiness. Vandal emerged, or what remained of him. His once pristine facets were cloudy, patched with crude solder. He moved like a chandelier, in an earthquake. Admiral. Ivy didn't lower her wrench. You're trespassing. I am retired. His voice crackled, a scratched symphony. The sculpture, I wish to comprehend it. She led him to the lava fields. The molten rivers here were domesticated, coaxed into power grids and heating coils. Vandal shuddered at the heat, his patches glowing like shame. You're melting, she said. Yes. He extended a trembling prism. It is efficient. They stood in silence. The lava burbled a lullaby. Moth Ivy found him at dawn, half submerged in a cooling flow. His form fused to the rock. He'd arranged himself into a crude approximation of a thumbs up. She laughed until she wept. Leon joined her, a thermos of lichen coffee in hand. New tourist attraction. Nah. Ivy flicked a pebble at Vandal's frozen grin. Just geology.